So the next thing I want to talk about real quick is on the list there is primary functions. So full transparency, you can't Google primary functions and read up on it. It's something I completely created out of my mind on my own. So I only preface this by saying I'm not an expert in this terminology and things like that. I am an expert in applying this, and it's one of the tools that maybe created the most dramatic improvement in performance in my entire career. And so what happened was we were having problems with certain segments of our business, right? And what I found was, especially for tradespeople, especially blue collar trades, but broadly applicable to all kinds of people who provide a service for their clients, people tend to focus on things like quality, workmanship, craftsmanship, price, guarantees and warranties. They tend to focus on that as being the end all be all for customer service and customer satisfaction and the success of the company. And that's not generally true. So for example, if you had a company and you had 35 vehicles, 35 company vehicles that would be driven every day, I can make a pretty compelling argument that your greatest liability is those 35 vehicles being driven every day. If you have 3 accidents a month, you won't be able to get insurance before you know it. But if you ask your employees, what are the top 3 to 5 most important things we do? They're generally going to say things like workmanship, quality, offering a good guarantee, having competitive pricing. They're not going to say not having vehicle accidents. And once you explain to them, though, that the greatest liability we have, and perhaps the biggest risk this company has in general, is safely driving those 35 vehicles or 40 vehicles, it makes perfect sense. But it's not an intuitive thought. It's not a natural thought that they would have those things. So again, one of the ways we get frustrated as business owners is our employees don't quote unquote get it. But we don't do a great job of explaining things to them. So once I began explaining to people, one of the most important things we do, arguably the most important thing we do, is preventing accidents. Once I began explaining to the folks, well, guess what happened? Their behavior changed. Instead of basing all of their value for themselves and their performance on workmanship and quality, which is very important. If you're an electrician or if you're an electrical company, you can't be the best electrical company in town if you don't in fact do good electrical work. That's obvious. But there's other components too. You can't be the best electrical company in town if you can't get insurance. And if you're wrecking vehicles at a regular pace, or you're catching buildings on fire, or you're doing those kinds of things, you won't be able to get insurance, or people won't trust you in their homes or in their businesses or things like that. And again, these things they're kind of aha moments. Like, they make perfect sense once you explain it, but they're not natural thoughts for most employees. So once we explain the most important things we do, in our case was the trade we performed. The second one was accident prevention, because we had 40-something vehicles being driven every day, and that was our greatest liability. And the third one was communication, effective communication with our clients, because that was the number one reason people chose us over brand X. Once we began explaining to people the 3 most important things, and I can make a compelling case that each one of these things could be the most important thing we do, doing our trade very well, effective communication, and accident prevention. Once they began to understand that, everything changed. They began to perform well on the things that we were struggling with before, because they understood the most important thing we do is accident prevention, not the trade we're performing, not the service we're providing. Now, could you also say the service we're providing is the most important thing? Absolutely. Could we also say in our case that communication, effective communication, was the most important thing we did? Because without that, our customers didn't have a compelling reason to call us? Absolutely. So that's where I came up with this term, primary functions, which is probably not grammatically correct. But my point is, each of these things, you could make a compelling argument, are the most important thing we do. And if we don't get that right, nothing else matters. Sharing that information with a team of people that you're struggling to get on board with, understanding things like, why does safety matter? Why does it matter that we get our bids out on time, or that we finish a project on time, or we communicate with people about where we are in the process with different services we're providing? If we don't offer this context of like, this is the most important thing we do, then the compelling why is not there. And again, as I've mentioned before, if they don't understand why something matters, we can spend all day long talking about how to do it, and they're not going to do it because they don't understand why it matters. Explaining the primary functions is a way that gets them to understand the context and gets to understand the importance of the why we have these priorities we do. safety being one for many companies, especially if you have a large fleet of vehicles.